I was at a party and a couple of lawyers were talking, and I had no idea what they're talking about. There's a lot of Latin that was being thrown around. There's a lot of terminology that I had no idea, and I just felt a little confused and frustrated. And I think that the investment industry, that can be the case. So I'm going to go over some common language that we use that that you might not understand or might get confused. So the first one is ETF versus EFT. So ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund. It's something that's traded on the market. It's mostly associated with index funds, and so it's tracking an index like the TSX or the largest 500 companies in the US, the S&P 500, or the Dow Jones, or an international index, and that's what it's mostly associated with. There is other options for it. There's active ETFs and different types of investments there. And so it is an investment that's traded, and it could be various forms of it too. And now EFT stands for Electronic Funds Transfer. And that's when we're sending money, right? We're going to be moving money. We use it through electronic funds transfer. So I might sell an ETF for a client and then EFT them the funds. So very close and very easily to get confused. Point number two is a dividend versus a distribution. And so they're two different things. A dividend is a true dividend is a company earn some money, they pay taxes on it, and then they distribute it out to their shareholders. And I associate it with like publicly traded companies, and usually publicly traded companies in Canada, they pay out what's called eligible dividends. And so if you're held in a non-registered account, they're tax preferred. If you hold international companies and you receive a dividend from them, it's taxed as usually ordinary income. And so that's a dividend. And so that kind of comes out from you. And now there can be a distribution, and that might come from a mutual fund, that might come from an ETF or a trust or something like that. And you're getting a distribution. And so that isn't necessarily it's earned, it's just they're paying you out. So it could be return of capital, it could be a capital gain. Like it's not necessarily that the thing's earned it, but they're paying it out. Some companies too, for mutual funds or ETFs, they have a constant payout. And the reason for that is, investors like regular stuff. And so investment markets aren't necessarily regular, but the investment will pay out a regular amount, and that's to help cash flow out. Or they might not pay very much distributions out at all to keep your taxes down. There's all kinds of things that can happen with that. So just keep in mind that if you're getting something from an investment, it may sound like a dividend, but it might be a distribution, and just not to confuse the two of them. The next one is book value versus market value. And this is really common to distinguish, because book value is what you paid for something plus any reinvested dividends, or if you bought some new units. And so people sometimes think, hey, this is what I actually paid for it. Well, it's not, because it's what you put in plus dividends. So there's been some growth on there. It's maybe not the right, exactly what you put in. And then you want to compare that to market value. Market value is what you could sell it for today. So market value changes every day, and it moves around. And so comparing those two, and that'll come up to my next point, is gain loss versus rate of return. And so gain loss is often a tax thing, right? Like you're looking at something from a tax perspective, and so it's outside your registered plans, and a statement will show gain loss. Well, that's your book value compared to your market value, like whatever that is. And then so if it's gone up, it's a gain, and it's a taxable gain. Gain loss generally on statements doesn't include reinvested dividends, and so, or just even dividends that are taken in cash, I should say. So the gain loss doesn't take dividends that you've received. So it's not actually showing your actual rate of return. It's more of a tax thing to see, like, hey, what's the tax consequences of this decision? And then rate of return is, what's been in your pocket after fees and expenses, like what have you earned on this investment? And it could be less than a year, it could be more than a year, it could be several years, and then there could be a compounded rate of return as well. So difference between the gain, like don't get confused gain loss with your actual rate of return, because the two are different. I hope that helps. And if you have any questions or terms that you want me to explain, please let me know.